welcome to another edition of the Chicks on the Right podcast. Today, look at who we have here.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I love him. He is so great.
He is.
Is it really him, or are you guys just spoofing?
Oh my god.
Oh my god, how did you get him?
How did
I
I
know.
hear it's
you?
impossible to book.
I don't know. Just a
'cause
couple
he doesn't
of
have a
whores.
phone.
Couple of whores that got Glenn Beck. Oh my god.
I mean, you barely need introduction, but just
Right.
to get it out of the way,
Just
for
do it.
for the losers out there who don't know who this is.
No, for the lucky ones, really, for the lucky ones.
He is syndicated radio host, CEO, and founder of Mercury Radio Arts, the parent company, The Blaze. He is host of the Glenn Beck TV program. He is the author of 6 New York Times best-selling books. The latest, which we now have a copy. What? Is it 10?
Yeah, it's 10. We haven't
Oh my
updated
God.
anything for a very long time. Yeah.
Wow.
We've got-
Okay. Apologies.
Like,
no,
this is
all
the
please.
latest.
Yeah.
Please.
This is the latest. It's called Chasing Embers. Tell us all about it, because we haven't had a chance yet to read it. We just got them.
Yeah.
Oh, so I could tell you anything.
You could.
Yeah, you can tell us anything and we believe it.
Actually, let me tell you why, how the premise came and then why I wrote it. This book started, I write stories in my head all the time. And this one has been in my head since about 2000, I don't know, 6 or 7. And I was reading Karl Marx. And if you've ever read Karl Marx, you're like, this doesn't make any sense. How does anyone believe this? And it just is all against human nature and everything else. And I thought, what is the draw to him? And in America and the West, I think it's because, you know, he's the rebel, he's the radical, he's the one against the system, man. And I thought, you read him and then you read Jefferson or Adams or, any of them. And there is such a difference, and it's so clear when you're reading these guys. And I thought, what is it going to take before Jefferson is a revolutionary again and not the stuffed shirt? You know what I mean? And I thought, I think it's going to take the loss of those and making them very unpopular to radicalize them again and have kids reading it when it's absolutely not supposed to be read. That's no, you don't do that. That's when they'll start discovering these guys again. And so that led me to a series of thoughts of, how do we preserve that for that generation and what could happen? And so I came up with this dystopian world where a public-private partnership has put together these cities. And everybody lives in these cities, and it's all going to be great. It's all of the WEF stuff, the World Economic Forum stuff, except it failed. And so these are failing cities. But it's very, very dystopian. And the parents who would be, us now or the next generation that lived at these times, anyone who just didn't buy into the whole WEF thing, they're kind of liquidated. And so there's a group of people that have tried to preserve what they could remember and write it down because all books have been banned
Oh my
now.
God. Yeah.
It
And
sounds like Hunger
history
Games.
Hunger Games. It's very Hunger
meets-
Games.
Hunger Games
kind of
meets
like- yeah.
Ayn Rand.
Yes.
Yeah, it is kind
Yes.
of, and 1984 as well, and so these what's left are these kids with memories of their rebellious parents who are just trying to keep record in their mind and then write it down and smuggle it out to the cities, to these rebels that you don't know much about at first, that are the public enemy number one. And you find out all they're trying to do is reproduce a library. They're trying to collect all of the history that's now forbidden and teach it to their kids in an oral fashion. And so the book takes place in this place called Topos. It's a dystopian kind of, I don't know, I always think of it as almost like Epcot, where nothing's real and it's just very dystopian. But these kids, one of them remembers their mom and dad being taken and liquidated, and she wants to be part of the crowd. You know, she's given the opportunity for some reason by the higher ups to become one of the rebel hunters, if you will, to just mix in with your friends and find out who's sharing things that, you know, they shouldn't be sharing. And she's given these tokens that she can just drop on somebody, and it will alert the government. This is a problem child, and then they're just taken away. And she starts to get wrapped up into, look at the power I have. You know, I think everything that I thought I knew was a lie. Meanwhile, another kid, a teenage boy, he escapes the city, and he doesn't know what he's looking for. But he goes in and he actually finds these rebels. And he's torn on whether to report them or not. And he's just a really screwed up kid, and you find out why in the book. But he's now learning that these aren't really rebels. And all the way through, you know, when Michaela and I put this together, we did a lot of research with teens, and we told them stories, not like a history teacher does, just told them stories about things of history, because we wanted to include those stories, the important ones, in the book. Mm-hmm. So they're discovering this history, not taught like a regular history book, to try to get the reader to go, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Is that true? And look it up and follow that trail.
Nice.
And so we did a deal where we would tell a bunch of, 12 to 18-year-olds stories, and then we'd tell them, what do you think of this? What discuss? And we found some fascinating views on things, and so we incorporated that to try to tap into their mindset on how they connect to different stories of history.
And so many of the elements that you just described, we've seen over the past several years, like the snitching and the things, like looking at your telling on your neighbors, not suppressing information, things like that.
Yeah, changing information. History's being changed now in real time.
Mm-hmm. Cheap fakes, man. It's all the cheap fakes.
Cheap fakes.
Cheap fakes.
Right.
Cheap fakes.
So all of this, we're living Orwellian times right now.
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
Mm-hmm.
We are.
Yeah.
And so it takes the technology that we're now working, on, and it takes all the dystopian things. They all run exactly the same, and it's running exactly like what we're seeing. And then take the actual WEF, World Economic Forum plans for cities and everything else, and takes and plays it out. And, obviously it fails. But it still enslaves and has turned people really into slaves and morons. Mm-hmm. They don't know what's real and what's not anymore.
Yeah.
Do you do the audio for do you do it for Kindle or, I'm not going to Kindle, but for Audible, do you do the reading of it?
We've been going back and forth on this. I haven't had time to record an audiobook yet. We've been going back and forth whether we should have somebody else read it or me. And I've got about 3 weeks to decide.
I was riveted.
No, I know.
Me
just
too.
Listening to that.
I know. I can't wait to read it. But I'd rather listen to it, like in the car or whatever.
Yeah. I tell you, it is. I think it is the perfect way in for parents that don't know how to teach history, don't want to lecture their kids, and their kids roll their eyes when they're lectured to.
Yeah, I got a teenager.
This is a book they can discover, and it's really good, and it's an adventure. It's got danger and, all kinds of stuff in it.
Can't wait.
That I think you really like.
Yeah,
and it's actually a 6-book series, but we got to make sure this one works, because the stories that we have, the way this whole thing comes about is so great.
It sounds amazing.
I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I was telling Mock that I rewatched your 2010 speech, your keynote speech at CPAC, and how you wrote progressivism on the board. And you talked about how progressivism was a cancer, and you called out some people like Soros and Barack Obama. And I'm just, and then listening to the synopsis of the book you just wrote and everything that is wrapped up in it. And just, I don't know, the fact that we just talked about living in Orwellian times. And I like progressive, do you feel like the cancer has spread? Do you think that, do you think it's inoperable at this point? Like where do you see us now? Because I mean, that's when we first started our site. It was right after that you gave that speech. And so I remember thinking, this is what we're fighting for as Chicks on the Right. And I look back on that and I think, gosh, things have changed. And I don't know if necessarily it's for the better, but they sure have changed.
Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you guys well enough to know that, that, God exists. And no matter how bad it gets, it will all be used for his purposes in the end. So wherever we end up, it's going to be, he's not surprised by any of this. And, I hope we're not living in the times, foretold, but we could be.
Yeah.
And we just all we have to do is, let me put it this way. When you started your site, are you a better person and citizen today than you were back then?
Yes, sir. I love that question. Yes, Glenn. I think so. I really do.
So am I.
I've lost, friends and family along the way, but I know myself better, and I have better and stronger and more robust relationships with people. Yes, I know who I am, and that.
Yeah.
And
you're
I know
living. You're actually living life, no matter how tough it is and how many things. I mean, there's a lot of things I wanted to do other than this. I never got into this business to do a serious talk show, especially where I'm the doom and gloom guy. That is not what I wanted to do or want to do. But I have lived an amazing life, and I'm better spiritually, and I'm better as a citizen. I'm a better dad. I mean, it's just, it all is used in the end for his purposes.
I love that.
I was going to ask you, piggybacking off of that, I was going to ask you if you felt more cynical or optimistic about the country's future, but it sounds like instead of either of those, you're just saying, let go and let God. You know what I mean? And that's actually, that's very reassuring.
It is reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I immediately feel better. I really do.
Well, I should have done that earlier then.
Right.
I do. I've gotten to a point to where, I've always said on the air that all I am is a reader of the signposts. And I'm just saying, here's the mile marker. Here's the time to the next exit. But I've said at some point, we're out of exits, and it's just going to go over the cliff. And that'll be an interesting ride. And we're there to where there are exits, but only with God.
Yeah.
Only with really disciplined people who have studied, know what they know what's true, will anchor themselves in the Constitution and the Declaration and the Bill of Rights, and then just go through hell, but do what they have to do. To make sure those things are preserved in one form or another. And, we've had some bouts with suicide in my family from the beginning. And then I've had 3 of my 4 children have serious bouts with them. I took one of my children to a psychiatrist who I thought at first I heard he was the best, and I thought when I heard him I was like, you're insane. And he said, your son knows what you're afraid of. And he said, you got to get past that. He said, so what are you afraid of? And my wife and I looked at him and went, I don't know, that he's dead. And he said, okay, so let's play this out. They commit suicide. What do you do? And we're just like, well, we mourn and then what? Well, we probably blame it on each other for a while, because we don't know how to deal with it. But then we get help, and then we get through it, and then we probably, I don't know, write a book about our son and suicide, and then we probably do a tour, and we try to help other people. And he said, "So you make it?" And we were like, "Yeah, of course we make it, but we don't want that." And he's like, "You need to tell him now you're not afraid of it. That's his decision. You're not afraid of it." And we were like,
Wow.
Wow.
No,
right.
I don't think so. Yeah, it was terrifying. And so he brought my son in, and we sat down, and he said, "Let's just play this out. You're dead. What happens to you?" "Well, nothing. I'm dead." "Okay." And then we talked about religious stuff. And then he said, "What do you think happens with your parents?" He said, "I don't know." And so we started talking and went through the whole thing and said, "There's nothing we can do. This is your choice. This will always be your choice. We can tell you we love you. We can tell you all these things. We can help you in any way. But unless you're willing to live, there's nothing we can do." And so we're just not going to live in that fear anymore.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
when you have problems, we're not going to take them on as our problems. We will help you, but then we'll end our little time together with, "It's going to be interesting to see you work that all out." That way, it's not ownership on us; it's on you. And it changed him. It really, I mean, it was remarkable. And I'm not suggesting that anybody else does that, because it was terrifying.
Yeah.
But it worked with us, and we've decided that that's the best way to look at everything in life. The country might be suicidal. Might be. I can't stop that. I can do my part, but unless the country wants to wake up from this insanity, it will commit suicide. And it's going to be interesting to see how Americans work this out.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons that I love you, is because you're vulnerable. You're not screamy. There are a lot of screamy people out there and doing what we do. There are a lot of and there's I
always
there's a
feel
space.
like I'm a screamer.
There's a space for that. You have more of a gentle, like a cerebral, gentle way about you. And do you find that to be difficult, like to be vulnerable and to share personal stuff? Because we just kind of started in the past couple of years doing more of that. That's because it's hard to put yourself out there and to share personal stuff.
So I have a really interesting, I can't relate and tell you because I didn't start doing that. I started in radio when I was 13. And I worked all the time. So my best friend was the microphone.
Yeah.
And I could say anything into it, and it won't reject me. The audience might, but it won't. And so I've always talked about personal things, but what happened in 1995 probably was I was doing top 40 morning radio, and I couldn't play Britney Spears one more second, and
hit you, baby, one more time.
I got to the point to where I would say, yeah, just one more time.
One more time. Right.
I got to the point to where this is how I would DJ the records. It'd say, "Here's another super, super classic from What's-Her-Face." And all of the songs were that, because I just didn't care. And I didn't care if anybody fired me. And I couldn't do it anymore. But we were talking about something on the air, and it was an event of something. It might have been the Clinton scandal or something. And a caller said, "What do you know? You're Mr. Goody Two-Shoes." Because I was known at the time as clean cut, all-American, blah, blah, blah. That was the image that had been created. But I was a raging alcoholic for most of it, and just not a good guy, And they said, what do you know? You're Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. And I said, let me tell you something. And the whole room stopped. Everybody's like, oh, dear God, what is he going to say?
Here we go.
And I said, you don't know me. Nobody knows me. Let me tell you about me. And I was actually, in a way, I think, trying to end my radio career. But the opposite happened. People started coming up to me and saying, I cannot believe you said what you said about yourself. And then they look around and go, but let me tell you, brother, I've been there. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we were all hiding from our darkest selves when we're all struggling with the same basic things.
Yeah.
And so if you're willing to be completely honest and say, yep, this is who I am, like it or not, there's parts of me I really don't like, but that's who I am. And your audience understands you. They know, generally speaking, when you're telling the truth, because they'll find all these inconsistencies and be like, wait a minute. And as long as you've done your homework on yourself and you know who you guys know this, you know who you are, you know what you believe, and you're not so strident that somebody couldn't come, on and say, I got to challenge you on that. I think you're wrong. If you're willing to listen and if they make a good point that you can't diffuse after thinking and researching and everything else, then you should come back on the air and go, you know what? I was wrong about that.
Absolutely.
And
you've
here's
done
my
that.
thinking on that. Oh, I've done that a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. So, and you've talked very, very openly about your struggles with alcoholism, drug use, and just illness in general. So how are you? Like today, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm probably better than I've been I'm better than I was even when I saw you guys.
Really?
Okay, good.
I'm probably better than I've been in 5 years.
I love
Awesome.
that. That's great.
I had just a turning point. There are times when you're just like, I just want a bag of Oreo cookies.
Oh my God, we understand that. That's with women. That's about
Right?
Speaking our language right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's just times that you just need a bag of Oreo cookies.
A trough.
And I eat them by the bag, not
And they have
not
different
just the
flavors
row.
now, Glenn.
Not the
bag.
sleeve, but
I know.
the bag.
I know. The
Why do they
bag.
have to make like pumpkin flavored ones now? Like they have all different flavors. Why do they have to do that? Why?
That's the problem with America. We have too
Right.
much. We
Too
have
many
so
choices. Too many.
When I was a kid, we were happy with one Oreo cookie, one flavor, and we liked that one.
Now there's 70. Yeah. Ridiculous. Yeah.
One of the things that we loved so much about coming to see you at the Blaze Studios is the museum and all the historical artifacts that you've collected. How did that start? And what would you say is your most prized item in the whole museum?
Just blown away by that place. My God.
I don't think I can answer the most prized because it's so vast now. It started in 2000. It actually started with my kids. I hated history when I was growing up.
Really?
Hated it.
I cannot believe
'Cause it's
that.
I
all-
know.
I
Oh my
just cannot
gosh.
believe that at all.
Oh, did you like history?
A little, I
Memorize
did.
the names and the dates and where the battle was.
And weirdly enough, my 14-year-old daughter, she loves it. That's like her favorite subject. It's crazy. But yeah, so I'm surprised that you didn't. You're so...
Yeah, no, I hated it.
Like
And
you're
my
like an
kids
encyclopedia of
hated
it.
Well, because I learned to love it. Because I learned, the word history has the word story in it.
Yeah.
Why aren't we focusing on the story
It's a great
of history?
point. Yeah.
And if you do that, then, forget about the dates. It was 1791. No, it was 1792. Okay, nerd nerd argument. Stop. I don't care.
Yeah.
What was the argument about? Which side won? What did they do with it? What did the losers do walking away? What happened? Why did this come up? Mm-hmm. That's all a human story. And when you focus on the human story, it's so much better. I could tell you, they tried to teach us George Washington chopped down the cherry tree and he couldn't tell a lie and he had wooden teeth. None of those things are true. Let me tell you 2 stories. First, he didn't have wooden teeth. By the time he was president, he lost his last tooth. His teeth were rotting out of his face. He had for a while a metal contraption in his mouth that looks like something that Steve Martin would have been installing in Little Shop of Horrors. Okay, it was horrific. Okay?
Oh my gosh!
And the reason why his paintings of him always has this kind of mouth like this is because he was trying to hide. He was so embarrassed by his teeth, and so when he became president, he was so embarrassed by himself that he wanted to. He wanted to do something, so he went for the latest thing, which was drilling holes in your gums and then implanting teeth in there in hopes that they would grow.
Oh my gosh.
Right? No anesthesia, nothing.
Gosh.
And so it takes this guy who, wooden teeth, what does that say anything about? That's not even true. Why?
Yeah.
This takes a guy who is a giant among men and humbles him. He's embarrassed by his own looks. And because he believes the president should look a certain way and be distinguished, he goes through that.
Oh my gosh.
Now that's a much better story than wooden teeth.
Yes, it is.
Never tells a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you the story of, I'm thinking about so many of them. Let me tell you a story. I was with the head of the American Museum of the Smithsonian, and I was looking for specifically things about George Washington that were negative, because I can tell you that before Abraham Lincoln, his mom raised him. He was terrified of his father. But because his father was like, you will believe in Jesus, as he's beating him. He falls away from the church and he goes dark. And there's a period of Abraham Lincoln's life where he's with prostitutes and everything that you've never heard about Abraham Lincoln. Okay. But then he finds himself and he finds God. Okay. I can find that stuff on anybody. I cannot find that stuff on George Washington. So I'm going to the Smithsonian to meet with the head of the curator of the American Museum. And I said, I'm desperately trying to find something on Washington that's bad, because I believe that you have to understand the story of America. Mm-hmm. You have to understand the Tuskegee experiments, and you have to understand the true meaning of the Declaration of Independence. Okay? All men are created equal. You have to understand both sides. If you're surprised by the bad things, all of a sudden, America has no credibility. Okay?
Yeah.
Because, wait a minute, I didn't know about that. What else are they hiding?
Yeah.
So, what are you hiding about George Washington? He said, I have something. He said, but we've only found one thing. And I said, what is it? And he said, come here, I'll show you. And so he took me back into the archives, and he pulls out all these drawers, and they're just these little thin drawers, and he'd pull one out and he'd be like, oh, there's George Washington's, baptismal gown. And, here's this and here's that. And I'm like, okay. Gosh. And he pulls out a deal, and it's a newspaper. And he says, this is the worst thing I can find on George Washington. And it's an editorial right before his second election. Okay. Somebody writes in that George Washington is a monster. And this person must know because the editorial is written by his mother. Okay?
Oh,
his
my
mother
gosh.
was this Yeah, his mother was this giant pain in the ass where she was just like, she was a nightmare. And she always like, oh, George, you cannot leave me. You can't go away. No. You know, all these stories of him just acquiescing. Yes, mother dear. Yes, mother dear.
Oh, my gosh.
So she wants him back at Mount Vernon. And so she writes this editorial and says, you have no idea. You cannot elect this man again. He's the most extravagant man you have ever met, and you'd be horrified if you knew the details. Just the details. This is it. Just the details on how much this man spends on ice cream every month alone should disqualify him.
Oh my god!
And now we have Nancy Pelosi following in his footsteps,
and Biden, and Biden too, with all the ice cream. Oh my gosh!
Love that.
Brilliant!
Just love that.
Wow.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Okay,
what
so
a story!
I have to know your favorite interview of all time, besides interviewing with us, obviously.
I did enjoy you guys. You are in my top.
I know we were the pinnacle of your career.
Oh, you're fun.
But besides,
I don't have fun very often. It's good.
But who would you say would be like the I guess the highlight when it comes to interviewing somebody, or somebody who was on your bucket list? You're like, I can't believe I just interviewed this person. Because I mean, I know you're Glenn freaking Beck, you know, but like who would be like a person that you interviewed that you were like, I cannot believe I just did that. Or just maybe not somebody who's famous that you just really enjoyed interviewing.
I don't know.
Can you? I don't know. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
You know, I interviewed a guy who was 106, maybe.
Oh my gosh!
He remembers. Yeah, he remembered Woodrow Wilson.
Oh
wow.
my
He remembered
gosh.
the Roaring Twenties. And he had perfect recollection. This guy I thought was going to live to 110.
How'd you meet him?
And
how did that happen?
I think he was a fan of the show.
Okay.
And he called in one time, and they're like, and I'm like, he's not that old. Come on. And got him on the phone, and then we brought him in, and he was fascinating because he could remember
That's amazing.
where he was. The stock market crash. He could remember where he was, World War II beginning and the end. And it was amazing. It was amazing.
Wow.
That's really cool.
The other guy that I never interviewed, but I became friends with, that was the first name that came to mind, but not an interview, is Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Billy Graham was it was such an honor to meet him. And he invited me to his house for some reason. And I had been praying on something. And I had just said to one of the guys in my office, I think I'm supposed to talk to Billy Graham. And they said, well, did you call him? Did you reach out to him? And I'm like, yeah, Billy's not taking my phone calls right now. Call Billy Graham.
I tried texting. I just texted him.
Yeah. And that later that afternoon, his office called and asked if I and my no, I swear to you, same day.
Oh my gosh.
Same day. His office reached out and said that he would like to meet with me and my family that following Sunday.
That is
so
crazy.
We had an hour to go up, and we ended up 6 hours up with him. And he was the most remarkable man I've ever met. I remember, he asked me to share my testimony with him, and we were both crying, and he was talking about how, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. He's like, every mistake I made, and I have made so many, were because I wasn't listening. Mm-hmm. He said, every accomplishment does not belong to me. And he meant it. He really meant it.
Yeah.
And so humble. And he said, but I know where I'm going. And he said, I know who I serve. And he said, I am not afraid of death. The whole dying part has me a little worried, but I'm not afraid of death.
What happens after, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So is there someone... I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you if there's someone that you aspire to interview that you haven't had a chance to talk with yet, or have you just checked off your entire bucket list of folks you want to talk to?
Oh, no, there's so many. There's so many. I doubt he's doing interviews. For the longest time, I wanted to interview Clint Eastwood. I still would. I'd love to interview
that's
his
a
son
great one.
about
Please
him.
invite us when that happens.
Right.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know why. We've reached out, and it's funny because he was at CNN doing an interview when I was at CNN, and one of my producers was in the hallway when he was walking with a group of producers, and my picture was up on the wall, and he stopped and he went, "That guy, I like that guy," and then just started walking away.
Were you like, hey, I'm that guy?
Yeah, I'm like, wait, let's talk.
me?
Can we talk? Yeah,
Oh my gosh, I love it.
and the current one is Elon Musk. I don't know why I can't get an interview with Elon Musk, but we've been
what
in
is that
touch with
about?
each other back and forth, but we just never seem to.
Does
put
he
it
not
together.
know
I
who
don't
you
know
are?
why.
Does he not know?
Sure he knows.
No, he's aware of who I am,
Yeah, I was
and that
gonna
may
say.
be the problem.
Yeah.
That may be the problem.
Glenn, it's always just such a treat. I mean, I feel like we're old friends now because we've been to visit you in person,
do
and I
too.
know we've only talked twice, but it feels very familial,
It's true.
and it's just such a treat. Thank you.
You are
Thank
a
you for
joy.
taking the
You
time.
guys are.
Always a joy.
Oh my gosh, you guys are the best. Thank you.
We just
thank
love
you
it.
for, and
Thank
thank you
you.
for all the stuff that you do and all the joy you spread.
That's
Thank
what
you.
we're
so
trying to
sweet.
do. That is what we're
Absolutely.
I
trying
know.
to do.
That is precisely our goal, and it was just a joy talking to you. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank
For
you.
a couple of whores, you're nice ladies.
True, a couple of sluts. True.